Hello and welcome to the UI Chat podcast from The Interface, the monthly show talking about everything Ubiquiti and networking. I'm your host Alex, and once again I'm joined by Evan McCann. Welcome. How you doing, Evan?
Hey, yeah, it's a busy month for Ubiquiti here for sure.
Yeah, when we start the podcast, I was always a little bit hesitant. Like, is there going to be enough news every month? And yet again, they've proved us right. Like, there is definitely enough news to get through. A lot of stuff you've added in the show notes this month. I mean, Ubiquiti have had that WISPAPALooza show. They've had a ton of new products sort of being teased. A few of them we talked about as well. A lot of new software updates and some other news as well. But the first thing I want to get to is there's some follow-ups from last episode. So quite hilarious. Like, I think after we finished recording, there was a new switch announced just literally after we finished recording. Just want to talk about that new switch.
Yeah, so that we recorded, I forget exactly which day, but September 20 something, and then on the 28th, at least that's when they made it official. So I think a few days before that was, it just was added to the store with no announcement, and then Ubiquiti officially announced it. But it's the Pro 8. So it's very similar to the Enterprise 8, where it seems to have that same size and even like the same enclosure. It basically takes the Enterprise 8, removes 2.5 gig support. It actually adds 2 ports upgrade from PoE Plus to PoE Plus. So there's a bit more PoE availability. But it's basically the same product, just 2.5 gig support, yes or no is the decision there. And I think it's $349 US. I'm not sure what it is for you price wise, but one more switch.
Yeah, it's $349 US, and then I wrote an article for the interface, and then it was €336. At the moment, I'm noticing with the UK store, it sometimes is available and sometimes isn't. It's really odd. So sometimes they kick you back to the European store, and sometimes they make you pay. Oh, it's really, really odd. I'm not sure what is going on there. Because I ordered something the other day from the UK store, and it arrived in a few days. So, but now when I go to the UK store now, it's in euros again, which is just, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, they haven't made any announcements about the UK store. It's just been like in and out.
In and out for the past few weeks. It's really weird.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume. I mean, there's clearly something going on behind the scenes, and you mentioned that they set up a new company, and I'm assuming that they're just having trouble importing product, or
I'd imagine so. Yeah,
something going on there, but that's odd.
Really strange. Yeah. Anyway, this new switch is sort of a replacement for the US 8 150 watt, I guess. So if you're after that sort of form factor and that sort of type of device, I guess that a newer device you go for is probably this Pro switch.
Yeah, well, the Ubiquiti switch, or especially the UniFi switch lineup is more crowded than ever, because most of, if not all of the first generation models, which are, some of them are getting near 10 years old at this point. I think the first rack mount models came out in like 2014 with early UniFi days. But yeah, so almost all of those are still available. They have the first generation XG, like the XG6 PoE, the XG16. And then they have like the light models from the second generation. They have the regular rack mount models from the second generation. They have the Pro, they have the Enterprise, and then they have a couple different, like desktop size switches like this. So Enterprise, the Pro, they have the light, they have the first gen. Like if you're looking for like an 8-port switch, it's like, which of these 7 or 8 ones do I want to get? The Pro 8's nice. I mean, it has all of the good stuff from the second generation. It has layer 3 features. And yeah, it has that small size. So, unless if you don't have a network equipment rack, this is kind of one of the, bigger switches you can get. This and the light switches and the Enterprise 8. But yeah, it's I know you wrote about it on the interface, and I took a look at some. I used it as an excuse to look at all the other UniFi switches that are similar, and I also looked at a bunch of competition. So what does Aruba Instant On? What does TP-Link Amada? Cisco Small Business, like what do other equipment vendors have? Because I know a lot of people were complaining that it's a Pro switch and it doesn't have 2.5 gig support, even though the Enterprise does for $120 extra. So I was just seeing, like, is there something else out there that's similar shape, similar price, that does have 2.5 gig? I think Netgear has something that's even cheaper that has 2.5 gig. MikroTik has some. And then, of course, the Enterprise stuff. And actually, Cisco Small Business is fairly competitive, too. But, yeah, there's no shortage of options for small desktop switches.
Yeah, and I like the mounting things they're doing for the light switch and this new switch as well, well the Enterprise I guess as well. It's got that template that you put on the wall first, and then screw it to the wall, and then you can slot the switch in rather than have to fumble with. I think on the 150 watt switch you've got the rack ears and you can turn them backwards and you can mount the thing to the wall. So I appreciate the improved mounting on these new switches now. And I think if you have to, as you said, if you've got a deployment where there's like one or two switches in different random places and you haven't got a rack mount, this is ideal. So
or just it's weird that the Pro has 802.3 BT, like the 60 watt PoE++. They have two of those ports. So I know that like Cody mentioned, there's especially some of the newer, I think, like access devices, like I don't know if the UA hub, the doorbell, some of that stuff requires, they can't be powered by just PoE+. So it's nice that has that, and it makes the Enterprise not having that seem a little bit weird. So there's some interesting little details, but nice switch otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next thing that you mentioned, you managed to convince Ubiquiti to rename a switch. I haven't followed what that is actually about, but do you want to just explain that?
Yeah, kind of a joke. I think it was like a day or two after we recorded. I was just because of the Pro 8 out, I was looking through all the switch models, and I was looking at we talked about it last time, the models, especially a lot of the Gen 1 models got renamed. So the SKU is still the same. It's still US-XG-6PoE. This is an old first gen XG switch. But they renamed it with, it was, I don't remember exactly what they called it. Let me bring that up. Yeah, they called it 6X10GBE, SFP Plus Gen 1. And I was like, to me, why would you rename a product that's been out for 5 years? So I just made a stupid little crappy post on their Reddit, and curiously, like 2 hours later, the US store product was renamed. So I think just by pointing that out, maybe like some intern just decided to rename it, or Lord knows what happened there. But yeah. I just made a stupid joke post, and then I noticed that the name went back to what it was. So you're welcome.
Yeah, could have been coincidental, but I guess that with the revamps of the store, I guess maybe new people are working on it, and not too sure what some of the products were, I guess, or I'm not sure what's happening there, but yeah.
Yeah.
Quite funny.
Anyway.
Yeah, on the side note, I did wonder why they're keeping a lot of the old stuff in the store still. If they're replacing stuff, he's mentioned some of the rack mount switches are coming on to 10 years old now. Just wondering when they'll cut the old stuff out of the store. It seems odd to me.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're still producing that. Like I don't want to spend a couple $100 and figure this out for my own, but like I wonder if you go to their store, buy a first gen switch, was it something that was produced 3 years ago and it's just sitting in a warehouse, or are they still manufacturing those?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm assuming people still buy them, and that's why they're still making them and still selling them. For old switches, I mean, a gigabit switch with PoE or not,
it's not really out of date, really.
Yeah, it's not really out of date. The more curious thing is they still sell like AC Wave 1, like the AC Light, the AC in-wall. Those are old access points, and of course Ubiquiti doesn't typically reduce their prices. So you can get an AC in-wall for $99, or like an AC Pro for $150, or you can get a Wi-Fi 6 version for the similar price. So I think the old access points are probably the thing I would think that should go away. Old switches, probably not a big deal, but yeah, they do love to hold on to old product.
Just before we get started on the Ubiquiti news, I just want to take a little time to remind you to review the show if possible. So thanks to everyone who's been listening to this podcast. Me and Evan look forward to coming back every month to provide our takes on the latest Ubiquiti updates. We would really appreciate it if you could review this show in the podcast app you're listening in, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anything else. If you're watching our gorgeous faces on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment and hit that like button. It really helps other people find this show. Without further ado, let's get back to the Ubiquiti news.
And what's the thing on YouTube? Don't forget to smash that bell for notifications,
Yeah, definitely. So I can't remember exactly when this was. It must be a few weeks ago now. But we had WISPAPALOOZA. So for the uninitiated, WISPAPALOOZA is an annual event that is hosted in a hotel in Las Vegas, I guess. I've never been. But it's basically a load of WISP nerds and WISP folk just sort of descend on a hotel in Vegas. And Ubiquiti haven't been there for the past few years, I don't think. They made an appearance back in 2016. Someone I used to work with went to that event and they launched a load of stuff. But they've they had an event there, and I think Robert Perro was there as well. He's been making the rounds in different events lately. But there's a load of new Ubiquiti consoles. Some of them we talked about on the show an episode or two ago. You've got the UniFi Express, other devices as well. So what have we seen at that event?
Yeah, so there's, as far as I can tell, there's 4. The 2 that we knew about before and the 2 that they showed off at the trade show are the UniFi Express, UX, and then the next-gen Gateway Lite. That's the UXG Lite. So we just talked about these last time or 2 shows ago.
Yep.
They've been kind of kicking around in the software, and we've seen FCC filings for these. So as far as I can tell, the UniFi Express and the little, they had like a little card showing what the device was at the show. So the UniFi Express it's a UniFi OS console, 1 gig WAN, 1 gig LAN. So there's only 2 Ethernet ports. It has built-in Wi-Fi 6. It has a little small display. It runs UniFi Network, and then, at least this was new to me, it can also act as like just an access point. It'll mesh to an existing UniFi network.
Okay.
So that's what I assumed. Like the UniFi Express, it's either an all-in-one get you started. I'd assume it'd be a cheap little device, so you could start your network there, but you can also just plug it in and add it to an existing UniFi network. I think that's at least we'll learn more, but that's the interesting part to me about that device now.
Yeah.
The next gen Gateway Lite it's more of a standard replacement for the USG, I believe, where it's only a gateway. I don't believe it runs the UniFi Network application, so it's not a console. It's just a router firewall gateway. It has a 1 gig WAN, a 1 gig LAN, and it uses USB-C for power, which is nice. But yeah, no Wi-Fi, no applications running. It's just a small, it's what we've been asking for a very long time, which is like, hey, make a new USG. So those are the 2 that were at the show, at least.
Yeah.
And then the other 2, I know someone was going through I think it was like the beta UniFi Network application, and found, a lot of people sometimes find new devices by looking at like the icons in there. So someone found one called the UniFi Dream Router Ultimate, which is, we don't really know much about this, and sometimes devices get added there and they never get released. That's definitely happened. So as far as I know, there's no like confirmation, there's no FCC filing. We don't know if this device is ever going to come out or when, but it probably won't be for a while, even if it does. But the Dream Router Ultimate, it's kind of just an upgraded UDR. So we don't know specs, but we can kind of speculate where, if you look at the UDR and what's limiting about it, it's a $200 all-in-one console. It's kind of a weird, better than UDM base. It's better than the UDM in some ways, but it's also cheaper. The big limit of the UDR is how many applications you can run. It only has a dual core CPU. So I'd assume the Dream Router Ultimate would have, either a quad core, something, it has more CPU power. It could have 2.5 gig Ethernet. It could have more PoE. It could support more Protect cameras or more applications at one time. And it might be because the UDM is older but more expensive. So I would think maybe the UDM would go away and it would slot in there like $300-400, but it's all speculation. But that icon was found. And then also the other one that I actually found, because I was looking to see where those icon files are. So I downloaded the latest early access, and I found the folder called UDM ENT, so like UDM Enterprise. And that icon file, it looks like it's a standard rack width. And you can even make out the Enterprise label. So this maybe just is like a tier above a UDM SE. So, higher PoE power, or probably no PoE power, but higher bandwidth interfaces. So it looks like it has 4 SFP and 2 Ethernet. So it could be SFP 28, like a 25 gigabits per second interface. It could be 4 SFP plus. Again, no confirmation, no FCC filing, but this could be coming. But all of these 4 devices, 2 of which we are fairly confident are coming soon, and 2 might not come at all or might not come for a while, but they're definitely really investing in gateways, and a lot more products are coming soon. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I found with the UDM Enterprise is the fact this hasn't got a hard drive tray. I was wondering if that could have been, like, I saw the picture you sent me, that could have been like a UXG Enterprise, I was thinking. as well, like a very high-end sort of replacement for the UXG. What was the thing called? USG XG, I think, from ages ago. So it could be the replacement for that, because that was sort of very short-lived. It was about a year it stayed around. But the fact that it is called UDM as well, there might be like a UXG spin-off as well, hopefully, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's the other with all these products and naming. Like you're trying to kind of read their mind, because a lot of this stuff isn't official yet. To me, the UDM Enterprise, I mean, UDM to us means it's a console. So it means it at least runs the UniFi Network application, if not all the other software. And the other thing that could tie in with this is the Cloud Key Enterprise, where that is just a big A server that only runs the network application, so it doesn't run Protect, etc. It's meant for large network-only installs. So that's what I would think the UDM Enterprise is, where, it doesn't run Protect, it doesn't run Access, all the other software, but it's just a big dedicated firewall for high bandwidth, a lot of devices. I would assume that it does run, the UniFi Network software, but we don't know.
Okay, be interesting, yeah. The one thing I saw with the next-gen Gateway Lite, that'd be really cool. I guess they wouldn't do it, but the LAN port, I was hoping that would have PoE in, so to avoid the need for USB-C, because I don't know, in a smaller deployment, I don't know how you would get that on a UPS without just using like a phone adapter for it that it'll come with, and using like a power socket for it. You couldn't tie it in with anything else, but PoE in for the gateway would be quite cool, but I'd imagine not having that would be another decision, but not sure.
Yeah, I mean, USB-C, I'm happy to see that over like a DC barrel plug or USB micro or some and stuff. I think the Cloud Key can't, I mean, that could be powered by PoE in. Doesn't that have USB-C as well?
It does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and I think there might be a switch. I'm blanking that is USB-C powered. But yeah, PoE
Flex Mini.
Yeah, Flex Mini.
Yep.
So yeah, PoE in would be nice. But in general, I think people are just they want this product to be out. If it's PoE in or not, it's just like, give it to me, because it's been long overdue. Yeah,
and also if you are getting it, it's going to replace some USG deployment, and you've already got that's already power, like a 3-pin, like a raw power socket only, and you just swap that out for the USB-C, and it sort of gives you more flexibility. And if you wanted to really, if you had that device, you probably wouldn't be using the UXG little one, but if you had the Smart Power Pro, it's got some USB-C ports on it, so
yeah,
we shall see. But yeah, some good additions to the lineup, and to see what comes soon. But I find it interesting that they just show them off in public and with no prior announcement or anything. So
well, yeah, I guess this is kind of their new strategy now that EA, I mean, EA was normally the way that we learned about upcoming products. Now that EA is gone, I mean, we still have the FCC filings, which are, that's required by law. You those kind of things you can't avoid. But yeah, maybe they'll be more open about, making YouTube videos about upcoming products, or posts on the community forums, or we'll see them at trade shows and they'll show, hey, this is coming soon. So maybe they're still experimenting with that, but it's good to see so many new options pop up. I'm just excited to, see them get released.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now there's tons of software stuff this month. There's lots and lots of things. We had quite a lot of updates to the network application, UniFi Talk improvements, so some edge switch and UISP switch improvements as well. Should we get started with the most important one? It was UniFi 7.5.187, and that's got support for PPSK. And then I think when that came out, I had no idea what that was. Never heard of it before, but I since played with it and done a video for Hostify. But I guess have you had a chance to mess around with PPSK yet?
A little bit. You said you used it. I mean, do you want to explain what PPSK is?
Yeah, sure. So it basically means that you can have, it's sort of a standard of the WPA2 or it doesn't work with WPA3 yet, but just WPA2, and it basically means you can have one SSID. So imagine you had like an office, you just have like just random office SSID, and you can have I'm not sure the maximum amount of passwords you can have, but basically you can have different passwords, and whatever password you put into a device, it routes you through a different VLAN. So you could have, I don't know, one SSID, and then you could give the guests a different password, give your staff a different password, and it sort of declutters everyone's Wi-Fi list on their phone, so you don't have to go through and try and find and search for those SSIDs you want, you just say, "I'll just give you those passwords." So it's like intelligent VLAN routing, I guess. It seemed pretty good, and I tested it a few times. It seemed to work pretty well. I'm not sure how it would work with guest portals. I guess you still have to have a separate SSID for that. It seems like a good addition. I think, judging by some posts I read on the forums, that it's a much requested feature for quite a number of years. But I'd never heard of that feature before. But it's good though.
Yeah, and it's not a new standard. I mean, there are maybe 10 years ago, I think it was added to WPA2, and yeah, there's an old RFC about the initial idea for it. So it's not new. It's just new to UniFi, and I think it's kind of been new to this type of networking, because it's been like an enterprise level. Like I'm sure Cisco probably did this years ago. But as far as like small business kind of networking, I that's what I was curious about, is like, does Omada support this? Does Aruba Instant On? Do other vendors support it? I did see that Alta Labs, the kind of new just getting started company, they have something very similar, but it goes a bit further, where their version of this, you can do like rate limiting. You can do, I believe it like ties into guest portals and stuff like that, where you can have like a guest come in, pay a small fee for the slow network, and then pay more and get more speed. So you can have a kind of a more flexible setup. I haven't played around too much with the UniFis, but yeah, it seems like a fairly simple, like, you get chucked into this VLAN if you type in this password. So I'm curious if they'll go more into like rate limiting and more differences than just the VLAN tag being different on this. But yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere, and it's a great feature to have.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, TP-Link Armada does support PPSK. I've seen that in their sort of release notes before, so I think it's again I never really heard of it before, but it's good that they've announced it. And then with 75187, we also got a new dashboard for Wi-Fi only setups as well. So if you've just got some switches and an access point you haven't moved, or you don't want to move to a UXG or USG, it makes better use of that real estate you've got on the screen. So before, you'd have some wasted space. Maybe there'd be an advert for a UDM Pro, there was before. And now they've if you just want to use Wi-Fi APs, they've got some new widgets. So you've got widgets for the most active clients, the TX rates, right, retries and things, and also the most used or the most common signal strength. So if you've got a lot of clients on really poor signals, you'll see there's a good percentage on there. And then there's also like a nice graph with traffic lists as well, which is really good. I quite like that. It's good to see that they've sort of, knowing that a lot of people just use Wi-Fi access points sometimes, especially at Hostify. We have a lot of customers that just use Wi-Fi APs in enterprise deployments, so it's good.
Yeah, and this kind of jumping down the show notes a little bit, but just because we're talking about UniFi Network, I think this was last week. I forget exactly what day, but there was a 10.0 CVE which affected all Dream Machines. So not any self-hosted network installs, but basically Dream Machine, Dream Machine Pro, Dreamwall, all of those products. This was fixed in 7.5.187. So if you're running a UniFi OS console with an older version, make sure you update to .187, because this was affecting 7.5.176 and earlier. And I didn't really dig into the details. I think Tom Lawrence had a video about it, and a few other people kind of went more in depth, but all they said really is it allows people to implement device adoption with improper access control, creating a risk of access to device configuration information by a malicious actor with pre-existing access to the network. So as far as I can tell, it's like a local only attack. But a 10.0 CVE is a big deal. That's, the top of the scale.
Oh, okay.
So it was a really bad bug, very serious, but it seems, as far as I'm aware, it's only local. But regardless, if you have a Dream Machine, make sure you update.
Yeah, we'll link Tom's video in the show notes and also the podcast description, because it does a good job of explaining what that is, because I didn't really understand it from just reading that. So yeah,
I'm glad people like Tom are out there, because just this month, just with Ubiquiti news, there's enough to keep track of. So I'm always happy to turn to the experts. He knows a lot about security, so I would
That's true.
Listen to him.
And then we've also got UniFi OS 3.2.5. And that affects pretty much all of the UniFi OS consoles since we made the show notes, and they've actually pulled it for some reason since then. So we'll have a quick look at what that is. So that's sort of live feedback just now.
Yeah, I saw that they pulled. I mean, this was an early access build. This is the first early access build of 3.2, which we were looking forward to because there have been a bunch of recent UniFi Network application releases where they said this requires 3.2. Like I know DNS Shield is one of those features. Some of the things that they were changing about the web interface required 3.2 to support. So we knew this was coming. This was the first beta release. It was released 4 days ago and then pulled. I didn't see why. Did you?
Yeah, so I found out there's a comment from UI Glenn that says, we've pulled back this release. Only a few users will automatically see this upgrade. Manual upgrades are still allowed. It's pulled due to the massive amount of internet outage reported. We're looking into them. So I guess a lot of people had internet issues when updating, so not great. And then we mentioned last episode what DNS Shield was. Judging by some of the comments on this release page here, it's something to do with Cloudflare DNS protection. So I guess it's like a secure DNS. I can't remember if we mentioned it last episode, but it's like a...
We did.
Sort of, yeah, we did, yeah. It's like someone mentioned it's using Cloudflare, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah, and it's DNS over HTTPS.
Yeah.
So basically encrypted. Yeah. The idea is so that your internet service provider or anyone in between can't see what DNS traffic... or see any of your DNS traffic, so they can't tell what website you're going to based on your DNS lookups flying by.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, that weird that they pulled it. Hopefully they figure out what the internet outage bug was, but I don't want to. I mean, the big thing about 3.2 is DNS Shield, shadow mode is another big thing that came with 3.2. They have something that they're calling loop prevention, which as far as I can tell is just like their proprietary version of spanning tree, where the other device doesn't need to participate in spanning tree. But if you have a loop in your network, it'll figure it out automatically and kind of shut that port to stop the loop. And then the other thing is they added inner space. That's a new app on a console. So I got 3.2 and I haven't had any problems, knock on wood, on my Dream Machine at home. And Innerspace, it's like it's similar to the Design Center, where you can upload a floor plan, lay out your network, and it's just like a new app built into the UniFi OS consoles, I guess.
Pretty much.
So yeah, all that stuff in 3.2. Hopefully there's another release out soon that doesn't break people's consoles, and hopefully it hits stable release soon.
What I found with that loop protector, so my experience spanning tree, if you manually remove the loop, so if you unplug the cable that's causing the problem or sort it out, whatever, the switches will figure out that's happened. Whereas Ubiquiti said with loop protection, it says the disabled ports have to be manually re-enabled, so it's a bit more. It is a bit different to spanning tree. It says does not depend on spanning tree. And it will disable ports when neighboring devices don't support STP. So I'm not sure what devices wouldn't support STP. I guess I'm not sure what you'd have to have plugged into it. Maybe like a dumb switch that doesn't support it.
Unmanaged switches. Crappy IoT equipment. But spanning tree typically only comes into effect when you have more than one cable, or more than one path in the network, basically. Yeah. So I guess this is just saying, hey, you can plug whatever dumb device into a UniFi switch and we'll take care of any loops that happen. Interesting that it shuts the port and you have to kind of manually go re-enable it, but I guess that draws attention to, hey, you probably have a cabling issue here. And I think probably the bigger thing from this is shadow mode, which I know Cody is very excited about. I don't know if you've read about that or learned about that more. Yeah. But shadow mode, it's basically hardware redundancy, right? Like it's, I don't know if it's like a failover setup where you have, one Dream Machine Pro and the other one's just kind of sitting there ready to go in case it fails, or if it's load balancing between those two. I haven't read too much on the details. Have you? Yeah, so essentially it's not as seamless as it seems. So it's going to be, you have your main UDM Pro and then the secondary sort of child UDM Pro will sit beneath the other one, so on its LAN interface. So you plug the
WAN interface of the second UDM Pro into the LAN interface of the first one. So they're sort of talking to each other, and then what they do is they copy their configuration over all the time. So if any config changes, they'll sort of replicate each other. They've mentioned that no data or any stats will copy themselves over. And it says any backups will be stored as well. But one thing I found here, it says, in case the main console fail, customer can click to activate takeover and then replug the cables in. So it's going to require... It's not automatic.
I mean, at least this is the initial release of it. It's...
Yeah,
I know people have been clamoring for these kind of things like high availability, or kind of whatever you want to call it. There's a bunch of different terms for this. They call it shadow mode. Yeah, and it kind of makes sense that it's this kind of like limited manual cutover kind of situation where it seems like it's just literally just a second hardware device in the shadows. So I guess it's kind of a good name for it. But it makes sense that you would kind of have to manually fail over. Like you're gonna have to move your WAN cable over to that second hardware unit. You're gonna have to recable things and kind of adjust things if the first one fails, I guess. Because doing it the kind of enterprise way where you have two hardware units, they're both active, they fail over seamlessly between each other, that requires probably multiple public IP addresses, virtual IP addresses shared between them. It's a much more enterprise focused, complicated, expensive feature for when you have a really important device that can have zero downtime. So it's good that they're kind of going down that path, and this is maybe just the start of it. Maybe they'll have something more with either future hardware or future software, adding more features to this. But it's I'm not sure what to think of it until we kind of see it in action, but it does seem pretty limited. Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of this story is still to be told. So, I mean, this was the very first release. But with the upcoming hardware, they just switched over. They released the first version of UniFi Network 8. That was a beta release earlier. So, yeah, I think this upcoming era for UniFi gateways, this is kind of a lot of the big features that we're looking at. Shadow mode, new hardware, higher throughput, more features. So I'm excited to see what's next and what's coming over the next few months for all this stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And then you mentioned UniFi 8, so they jumped ahead a lot. So we're on 7.5. They missed out 6, 7, 8, and 9 for some reason. But we've gone straight to UniFi 8. Not the biggest release I was expecting, but there's a lot of cool stuff in there. The one thing I really like is the way the VLANs are done. So if you're a little bit like me and Evan, then your background is actual like networking in using edge switches and other things. The way that VLANs are done in UniFi is very backward compared to proper switch. Well, I guess say proper switches, but like more manual switches like Cisco or whatever. And it seems like they've gone nearly to that interface for managing VLANs. I've noticed. So you've sort of got a VLAN picker, and you can exactly see what's being tagged and what's native, which I really like. It sort of makes things a lot easier to read because it's a bit cumbersome at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, they did jump to 8, and I guess because of VLAN Viewer, they have a feature called Radio Manager, which is kind of the same thing for your wireless network.
Yeah.
A lot more detail in the web interface there. And a bunch of other things, but those were the two that jumped out to me at least. But I think they did the same thing with 6, where they had 6.5. I think that was the end of the 6 train, then they jumped to 7. And this is... It's all just made up numbers. They can, number them however they want. But I think this ticking from 7 to 8 is kind of a big, I think that's them indicating that this is going to be a big release, and there's a bunch of upcoming stuff that, it's kind of a clear line between 7 and 8 there. So yeah, VLAN viewer, radio manager. They mentioned WireGuard VPN client support. So I believe you can have your UDM as a client of another WireGuard server. I think that's the new feature there.
I think so, yeah.
And a bunch of other things. But yeah, version 8, here we go. I guess version 7's old now.
Yeah. No, I like as I said, I like the new VLAN viewer. They've said it's an easier way to see native and tag VLANs across your devices, and it applies to all the gateways as well. So it's good that they're going towards that way of doing things, because that's how a lot of people know how to do VLANs. So it's
right, and that's because way back when they had the port profiles, that's before the new interfaces back in version 5, version 6, they had the port profiles, which I think a lot of people were confused with. I forget when it was added. Sometime in version 7, they added, I think it was 7.2 maybe. They added the I forget what they called it, the port manager.
I think
port
so.
Viewer, and that was a huge step up. I really liked when they made that change, because they made PoE power a lot easier, a lot more prominent. They said, hey, here's your budget, here's how much you're using, and they also they kind of got rid of the port profiles, where port profiles are this is an AP port, and this is my native network, and this is my tag network, and these VLANs, blah blah blah. The port manager made that a lot easier, and then I think this is just kind of another step down that, where I've only played around with a little bit, but it does seem like you get a lot more detail. It's a lot easier to understand. So that's a really nice change. And the same thing with the radio manager.
That's nice.
I'm really impressed with all the stuff that they've done to the dashboard, that radio manager, the new feature that's coming in version 8, and just in general, they've spent a lot of time improving statistics, improving what's shown in the web interface, making it easier to identify problems. They still have weird error messages that don't mean anything, or you can't do anything about. You'll just see errors and go, anyway, there's still things to improve there for sure. And this is the first early access build, so I'm sure there's bugs in it as well. But yeah, I'm very impressed with all the investment in making the interface prettier, yes, but also more usable, and it put more information in there.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good to see it. So yeah, we have to stay tuned to what comes later in 8 through its beta process, and eventually to RC and official. So it'll be good. The next one we've got is a release candidate. It's actually now official. Is UniFi Access 1.20.13. What was the main things that you mentioned in this one? So you mentioned card management, emergency mode, door unlock options, multi-door chimes, and cameras. I also saw that, I don't know if it's with this version, but they're going to allow the G4 doorbell to become part of Access, I think. I'm not sure where I saw that, but that's quite good. But
yeah, when I was looking, before all the, releases, the 7.5, 1.87, version 8, the 3.2, middle of the month I was looking at releases, and it seemed like Access, Talk, some of the other UniFi applications were getting most of the attention. I guess now looking back, that was because these bigger releases were coming. But yeah, I saw Access and Talk had a couple updates. And speaking of big jumps, they went from 1.9 all the way up to 1.20, I believe.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So speaking of arbitrary number jumps, but yeah, it seemed like Access is coming along. I don't use that hardware, so I don't pay attention to it too much. But I know, for you're really interested in Talk and coming to the UK officially and all the other stuff. So there was that 2.1.9. Is it still? It's still not available in the UK, right?
No, the store still says the official store everywhere just says Q3 2023, which we're now in Q4.
Right.
I think. Yeah. So no, it's not there yet. And they announced, I think we mentioned last episode, that they delayed it until further notice. Well, not further notice, but delayed it slightly, be coming out soon. They haven't updated the store yet, but with UniFi Talk, there's a lot of stuff in here. So 2.1.9, you've got a new phone designer. So if you've got those full screen phones, you can choose wallpapers for everyone, ringtones, app availabilities. You can restrict access to certain apps for certain people on those phones. There's now more information about where the callers come from. You got on the Touch Max and the UTP Touch as well, and then there's better support for group call routing as well. There's a lot of stuff here to do with, I guess, some sort of standards. You've got A2P 10 DLC, something to do with registering SMS numbers. So it says that. Oh, I think it's to do with spam filtering by the look of things. So you've got carriers in the United States consider all UniFi Talk SMS traffic to be ATP. So, and they've started blocking SMS messages from unregistered phone numbers. So, it looks like something to do with spam filtering. I think. I'm not too sure what that means, but
yeah. And in general, I mean, this one release is kind of interesting. I like that they're still, to me, they're still a networking company, and these are kind of like hobbies to them. Like access control, doorbells, phones. In the past, I remember the first time they had VoIP phones, they kind of went away, and there was like not really much detail there. So I'm glad that they're still actively developing this. Like UniFi Access gaining an API, like that seems like a big deal to me.
Yeah,
they definitely are clearly investing a lot in these. So I think that's good for the people that are either on the fence considering them. Like these are actively developed. They are viable solutions for a lot of people. And the people that already have the equipment, at least they're not, getting abandoned like the first time they tried VoIP.
Yeah. I'm not too sure if there's been like a change of heart inside the company where, like we mentioned, the Solar Point has has risen from the dead. It might be that I don't know what it is. They might have noticed that certain things are being stagnant, and there are people that actually use it, and they're sort of renewing their focus on certain things. But I don't know why it's happening. We'll never find out, but it's good anyway. So.
Right, like EdgeSwitch X models got 1.5.2, which was just a small security fix.
Yep.
There was a new version of UISP with a bunch of mostly CRM improvements.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's like as a company, they have so many products over so many different areas. It's probably, at least it seemed like for the past couple of years, they kind of had difficulty keeping them all going. And I think they've done a better job of that recently, and kind of a clearer sense of purpose about, UniFi is definitely the main thing, and UniFi is mostly networking, but they also have all these other areas where they're spreading UniFi out to, and I think there was some growing pains with that change, but I think they're kind of hitting their stride now, and they've been pushing out a lot of good software updates recently.
Yeah, definitely. And one software update that came out today was UISP switch 1.6.0 beta 3, and it adds a GUI to those two models. So you've got the UISP switch and the UISP switch Pro. As far as I was aware, they weren't going to do GUIs for the UISP switches, but it looks like it's a... Well, actually, I'm wrong. When they did the UISP switch beta, when they did those UISP switches in the beta store, they did originally have a modified Edge Switch X GUI that people mentioned, and this one looks like it's basically just a modified version of that again. But it's good because there are people that want to use the GUI locally, and it sort of restricts. Otherwise, it's restricted it to the UISP application. But no, it's good. There's some other improvements in there as well.
Yeah, that's wild. I didn't see that until you just pointed it out right now. Yeah, the UISP hardware line still kind of gives me a headache when I try to think about it. Because it was... Yeah, I think they made a lot of promises originally about, they want to keep EdgeMax people happy with the level of features that they had there. And when UISP switches and routers came out originally, they were very limited, very buggy. They didn't have a local web interface. I think that originally there wasn't a command line to configure, and then I think the switches gained it.
Yep.
It's just been weird. And then the fact that the UISP switch has been out for a year or two at least, and now, just right now, they're adding a local web interface. So cool.
Yep, it's good.
I'm very happy to see that, because I guess this basically means you can use a UISP switch without a UISP controller, or like a server running somewhere, and you can have it kind of as a standalone device. So
in theory,
sure. Does that I want to know the details about. Does that limit the features you can use? Are there, do you have to convert it over into UISP mode versus local mode? I want to know how that works, but very interesting.
Yeah, and also the setup process. I remember the setup process is that for those switches, you scan a QR code, it finds a switch, and then the next step is to add it to the controller. So I'm wondering, as you upgrade the devices and they just have a local GUI, and you add the key like you do with a USB edge switch. So we shall see what happens there. Not too sure.
I have a UISP switch somewhere. I'll have to dig it out. And
yeah, I've got one as well, so we'll have to see how that goes. We mentioned UniFi Talk in the UK just recently, but there was I forgot I even added this to the show notes. It says Ubiquiti has pushed UniFi Talk UK launch back to the end of October, and end of October is when we're recording. So we shall see what happens there. And this is in relation to a community post that one of the Ubiquiti team put on the forum. They said, we are close to a UK launch, hoping to have it in EA by the end of October. So in the next 3 or 4 days, it should make its way to the EA stage of the forum. So I'm not too sure if that's even going to happen, but we shall see.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they don't even have a store, why would they launch it if they can't even sell the hardware?
Yeah.
I mean, you already have some UniFi Talk stuff that you got imported, right?
Yeah, I bought. It's been sort of discontinued, but it's the Flex phone, the plastic phone, that's sort of disappeared.
Right.
And then I've got a couple of ATAs as well. So I've used them with local numbers, like internal numbers only. But we shall see what happens. But yeah.
Well, yeah. Hopefully they sort out their UK problems.
Yeah. Not too sure what's happening there, but hopefully it gets improved. And there's a bunch of new accessories as well. I know Cody noticed there was a Keystone jack or Keystone blanking plate that was added to the store as well. But I noticed there was some UniFi dust covers. So these are like a little accessory. And Ubiquiti say it's a way to get everything uniformed in a uniform aesthetic with the UniFi rack mount equipment. But they're little plastic dust covers for the RJ45 ports. So I guess if you've got a dusty environment with maybe woodwork going on, you don't want all that stuff entering the switch ports. So you can buy those, and they're a pack of 24 for $19 in the US.
Yeah, that's cute little accessory. Those are totally optional, and you have to buy them. Like, I wonder if they'll, for like maybe the enterprise switches, maybe they'll come in the box. Because I'm used to port covers for SFP modules, or slots, but for just Ethernet ports, unless it's a dusty environment, this is definitely a for aesthetics thing. Yeah, and it reminds me of I think they still sell them and I forget if they still name them the OCD panels, which are like the blank rack panels. Do they still have those too?
I don't know if they're called OCD. Oh, they are as well. I think they are.
Yeah, which seems like a little.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know, little
uncomfortable
that they call them that OCD panels, because it's like kind of making fun of people. But you can buy blank panels. You can buy port covers. Yep. They have no shortage of accessories that you can add on. Yeah, it's good.
And then there was someone, I didn't even see any pictures of it, but someone mentioned there was some new USP Wave equipment shown off at the WISPAPALOOZA the other week. And this is the USP Wave Pro. When the USP Wave platform was announced last year, they had a YouTube video, and this was one of the devices that was launched with it. And this is sort of a long-range point-to-multipoint client for the 60 gigahertz platform they've got. And this is now being listed to the store. It's coming soon. It's got a range of 15K when connecting as a point-to-multipoint station, and then a range of 8 kilometers when connecting to a Wave AP for point-to-multipoint as well. So it's good. It's sort of got it's got a 10 gig SFP plus port, 2 2.5 gig Ethernet ports as well. Not sure why you'd need 2, maybe bridging. And it's on sale now for $5.99 in the US. So it's good that they're expanding that platform. I haven't had a chance to use some of the other devices, but I've used the Wave AP and the Wave Lite, I think it's called. But yeah, it seems pretty solid.
Yeah, 60 gigahertz stuff, like that, Ubiquiti calls it Wave, but yeah, 60 gigahertz from any vendor. It's great for short, really fast links. So yeah, it's awesome that they have this new model here, and if I'm understanding correctly, it can be used in a point-to-point setup, so you can just buy 2 of them and have a point-to-point bridge, or you can use it with the Wave AP or Wave AP Micro.
That's right. Yeah.
Not cheap. Ooh.
No.
But yeah, that's kind of the price you pay for long distance. Yeah, what 2.5 gig, and then 10 gig SFP.
Yeah,
I mean it's a pretty high end model, and it's nice to see Wave kind of continuing to expand.
Yeah, if you're a WISP and you've got no other option of feeding customers, that people will pay for that sort of service really. If they don't want to go to Starlink.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean you'll have to worry about rain and distance, like always with 60 gigahertz. But yeah, for us, I know a problem we ran into is 5 gigahertz was just a mess. So if your 5 gigahertz bands are saturated or you need a lot more throughput, this is good equipment to look into.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Yeah, we mentioned the last time we had was a CVE 10, but we mentioned that earlier in the episode. And that's all the news and all the software bits and pieces that Ubiquiti have launched this month. Last thing I want to cover is anything else that we've been working on ourselves. I know you've got two different guides that you've published recently on your website. So
yeah, so I mentioned earlier, I made a post about looking at the Pro 8 PoE, the new UniFi switch, and comparing that to a bunch of different vendors. And then I also I've been updating my Wi-Fi access point guide for UniFi. I was just kind of putting in the new comparison charts that I was making, but I spent a lot of time like reading through all the text, and there was a lot of older advice. I kind of cleaned that all up, so there's kind of less focus on the AC Wave 1, the AC Lite, the AC Pro. Those are kind of less important now, so I spent a lot of time updating that, adding a few newer models like the Enterprise in-wall, things like that, so it's all updated.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've published it's quite a simple list of basically which cameras work with UniFi Protect, but I couldn't find a definitive list from anywhere that listed all the different models of UniFi cameras that work with UniFi Protect, because if you looked at anywhere, you were under the impression that the G2 cameras wouldn't work with UniFi Protect anymore, and that isn't the case. I've tested one at home and it still works. So when UniFi Protect was launched, they said yes, it's going to work with G2, and those were never removed. And then there's a load of different variations, different products. You had like the UVC G3, and there was also like a random G3 AF that was like a SKU that was launched at some point. So there's a nice definitive list of all the different models of cameras and accessories and MVR devices that work with Protect. So I thought it'd be quite helpful for people to use a resource just to double check that their camera they've got is going to work with Protect, which is good.
Yeah, sometimes the simple list is very helpful.
Yep.
And that G2 cameras, is that like UniFi video?
Yeah,
days?
so
like before Protect?
Yeah, the old UVC stuff, so the old first generation dome, that little micro, which they had a golf ball in the marketing pictures next to. I don't remember that one. And then that big, huge, like pro camera. The only ones that don't work with Protect are what they consider G1, so the old AirCam devices. So we're on our third generation of UniFi camera system now. Actually, AirCam, video, and then Protect. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised that, I mean, it's how complicated could a camera be? Even though it's old, like the G2 stuff. I'm good that they're still supporting them.
I mean, the G2 bullet is crap. Compared to like a even just a G3, it's rubbish. But yeah, I bought one on eBay a while back just to play with, and it works. So
bad image quality, or why is it crap?
Yeah, it's the night vision on it's really bad. It's very the colors on it are very washed out. It might be a bad unit, but I never know. But it's very, very poor quality. But it is of its time, I guess. And then they're also
supported.
Yeah, they're also 24-volt only.
And okay. Yeah. I would love if you know how they had those ads on UniFi Network for for the best experience, get a Dream Machine Pro.
Yep.
It should be like when you plug in a G2 camera to UniFi Protect, it says, for the best experience, don't use this camera. Buy something newer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just funny. But yeah, it's quite impressive they've gone back that far with stuff, which is really good, because I guess there's some old deployments out there which people have moved from video to Protect, and it's good that there's support.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone's. I'm sure there's someone somewhere still using AirCam.
Yeah, it's before the time I discovered Ubiquiti, so I've never had a chance to use it. The GUI looks quite weird. I've found some pictures somewhere, but yeah. Fantastic. Thanks Evan for joining me on the show again. It's been good to talk about all the Ubiquiti stuff again. And then, as always, you can find this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. For a full description of this show, visit the episode link in the show notes, and of course, check out those chapters complete with images to make your listening experience much more enjoyable. We also have an ad-free premium version of this show available on Apple Podcasts that will help support this episode and future podcasts from the interface. Once again, thanks Evan for joining me on this show, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks.